Hello and welcome to this next after action report of O Group, the new Reiswitz Press game of battalion level World War II Wargaming. This is the Battle of Gurun. It was fought on the 14th, between the 14th and the 16th of December 1941, and as part of the Japanese advance down the Malayan Peninsula. So I've taken the game and transplanted it over to the Far East. This was fought after the disastrous Battle of Jitra, just a couple of days before, and was about 30 miles south of that position, and involved basically Japanese trying to push their way further south down towards Singapore, which eventually they did in about 6 weeks. The reason I chose this particular scenario is because I played it before, but I played this as rapid fire. It's also interesting in that there's a mix of British and Indian units. We've got the Surreys and also the 1st 8th Punjab fighting in the same area, as kind of a mix as units are falling back, and it's perfect for a battalion size game such as O Group. So there's not a great deal more to say about that really. As I say, I have played this scenario before 7 years ago, but using rapid fire, so I'm interested to see how it turns out with a game. We played a game of O Group instead, and we'll just see if the Japanese can actually get down towards Singapore. So this is the table, looking from the Japanese point of view. They are heading straight down this metalled road into Gurun itself, which these buildings represent the outskirts of. We've also got some rubber plantations here. These will be the same as orchards in the rules of O Group, so you will be able to see through them, but they will offer a bit of cover. We've got patches of jungle, as you can see, a couple of little plantation houses out on the edge as well, and the railroad that runs all the way down, that basically mirrored the road, the main road down the centre of down the line, sorry, the west of Malaya as well. We have the Kedah Peak over here. This is impenetrable, so I've covered it, the hills itself in foliage, so nobody can get onto that, and some swampier areas as well over on this end. So we're kind of bottlenecking the whole game really through here. The Japanese have to exit at least one tank off the bottom of that road to win the game outright. Otherwise, it's the first one to create 3 fubars on their opponent within 16 turns. Whoever has the most fubars at the end of 16 turns will be the winner. Will be the loser anyway. But as I said, the Japanese have also got to try to push forward, because this is what they're trying to do. The actual battle took about 2 days, overall from the 14th to the 16th of December, and ended in an Allied loss, with them falling further south towards other positions, I think down towards Kampar, but this is one of the holding positions before then. So let's have a look at the forces involved, and then we'll crack on with the game. So these are the British and Indian defending forces. As I say, we've got the Surreys over here. We've only got 2 companies of these. There was, I think, 3 actually. No, there was 4 of them in the actual battle, but I've cut it down because I don't want to get too unmanageable with too many companies on the table. And we've also got parts of the 1st 8th Punjabis as well over here. Again, just 1 company of them, just to add a bit of flavour to the game and just make a bit of interest as well. I've also given the British, I couldn't find it, I'm using rapid fire organisations written by Michael Sayce from some old booklets, and I couldn't really find any anti-tank support that the British had. But so what I've done is I've chucked in a 2-pounder AT gun for them, because they were there, or at least there was a few kicking around when they were fighting the defence. They've also got their headquarters here, battalion headquarters. Their spotter is in a armoured carrier. They've got mortars, also 2 rounds of artillery fire as well, and I've also given them as well an extra 5cm mortar, which will be firing 3d6 damage. I think it fires between 8 and 40 inches, and then they've also got a boy's anti-tank rifle as well, so they have a little bit of anti-tank power. The Japanese tanks aren't particularly heavily armed, so they're trading 1 for 1 really, so they're not too bad. The British are going to be used as they are in the rule book, so their training includes using smoke grenades to be able to move forward, and that's about it really for the British and the Indians. And opposing them are the Japanese. So this is the Ando detachments. The Japanese, as they were advancing, made up various different detachments of various units that they pushed forward, the ones who were fresh. So they were all continually leapfrogging forward as they were coming down through Malaya. So I think it's the 18th Army. So we've got 1 company, 2 company, 3 company here. We've also got a platoon of engineers as well. The 4 tanks, these are the Type 97 TK tanks. These are light tankettes. They only have an armour of 2, but the boys' anti-tank rifles, I think, only have an armour piercer of 2 anyway. So they're about matched really for what they are. I've also given the Japanese 3 MMGs, which they can attach to any particular platoon that they like. They have rigid they have rigid supports, so they're going to have to be attached before the game starts. I'll probably just distribute them between each of the companies. They've also got their 3 artillery pieces as well for their bombardments. They've got a 80mm mortar, and this is their HQ over here, and they have a spotter, but he's on foot rather than in a vehicle. So with the Japanese, because they're not listed in the rule book itself, I've had to make a couple of changes here. I've given the British and the Indians a second line rating, which means if they do a platoon route test when one of their platoons drops down to 1 section, I kept forgetting to do this in the other games, they have to do a route test. The British and the Indians will fail theirs on a 5 or a 6. Sorry, they will pass theirs on a 5 or a 6, not on the normal 4+. These are regular, but they also are going to be aggressive, so I'm going to give them an extra D6 in any close combat, because the Japanese were particularly aggressive as they were coming down Malaya. They're not Banzai troops, they weren't fighting with Banzai tactics, but they were very aggressive in their movements. So this is the Japanese, you've seen the British and the Indians. Let's crack on with this game. Right, so I've done the deployment phase. I've already done the rolls. There's not much point in seeing that. If you want to see that, have a look at the first O Group video I made, and I explain what happens with the deployment rolls. But this is the British and Indian setup. So we've got A Company over here, which is the 1st 8th Punjabs. This is their company commander. He's on the table. This is Company A, and they've put 3. We rolled 6 combat patrols for the British and Indians, so they've got their maximum one at the moment, 3 per company commander. I'm basically using the road as the company area. The company A is pretty much bottlenecked into this little area because we've got the impassable Mount Kedar here on the left hand side of them. So I put them up here against the plantations, so they can either get into the cover of the plantations or behind those hedges, those fences there, if they can get to deploy on the table. Company B, the Surreys over here. These guys, their company commander is here, actually in Gurun itself. I've kind of set them up close to their historical counterparts where they were set up, so they're pretty much in the same place if you look at the situation maps. And they've got their 3 combat patrols, one out here in the little plantation farm here as far forward as they could get it, and then a couple more here, one there in the cover of the jungle, and then another one here in the built up area of Gurun itself. Also, unfortunately for them as well, they rolled 2 interdiction dice, so that means for the first 2 turns they're going to be finding it difficult to actually deploy onto the table. They'll have to roll a dice for that, but that's the situation as it is. There was heavy rainfall around this time, so that's probably what's hampering their movements as much as the Japanese forward battery firing at them. And speaking of the Japanese, they actually managed to populate the table pretty heavily. So they got... Oh, one more thing to mention is the British also got a ambush point as well, and I'm going to set up an ambush point somewhere. I'll do a different way of doing this to the rules, just so I won't know where the ambush points are themselves, but I'm going to I'll talk you through that in a second once I've set it up. But this is the initial setup for the Japanese. They had 4 on-table units. I was going to give them all to Company A, and put the entire units on, including the combat engineers attached to them. What I've done instead, because they may get a hesitant company for their command roles, I didn't want it to be, the one company that's got four platoons on and the other one that hasn't got anything on. So I've split it up, given both 4 platoons here, 2 platoons each. So we've got these ones here. You can see they're kind of making a heading for the village of Gurun itself, using that central cutting road. And we've got Company B over here, which I'm going to be flanking around the side of these plantations to come in again on the side of Gurun and try and cut it off and get those tanks off the table. We've got our spotter here. He's in the orchard at the moment. Sorry, not the orchard, the rubber plantation. And then they managed to get on 5 combat patrols. So 3 of them are for Company A over here, and then we've got 2 of them for Company B over here. One heading down the road, the other one again in a flanking position. Company A, similar, down the road, and a couple of flanking positions as well to try and either clear out that the possible combat patrol here, and also just try and clear this railway line as they head down as well. So that's pretty much the setup. I'll talk you through the ambush, and then we'll go from there. Okay, because I'm playing solo, I don't really want to know where the ambush point is, and these are some old markers I made, some old tokens I made for some of the early games I was playing a year ago, and I've hung on to them because they're still very useful. So what I've got pulled out is 2 dummies and a 45mm anti-tank gun. I know this came from Stalingrad, but this is going to be my 6-pounder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these 3, shuffle them together so I've no idea which is which. So I've got then 2 dummies and also 1 actual unit. And as I said, I don't know which is which because I can't see through that card. So they're relatively shuffled up, I think. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to place them in particular areas that I think would make good ambushes. And then they will be revealed if I get to reveal an ambush, or I want to reveal an ambush, or the enemy units get close enough to reveal them. So I'm going to stick 1, I would think. Actually, to be honest with you, I just saw that, so I'm going to give them another good shuffle. I could actually see what it was through the with the light. So this time I'm not looking at what it is, so that's face down. I'm going to stick another one here, and then, well, I know those tanks are going to be coming down the road. Obviously I'm not sure where, so I'm going to stick another one, the last one, in this pig pen. Normally I probably would scatter them across the table, but because the Japanese are so fixated on this metal road and getting those tanks down, I'm going to leave it at that, and I think that's going to be my ambush positions. And as I say, they will either be revealed or they can try to reveal them. If it's a dummy, just take it off. If it's not, then you put the 6-pounder anti-tank, 2-pounder anti-tank gun on there and blaze away for all you're worth. Right, so first turn of 16. So let's have a look at what we've got here. I'm rolling white for the British and the Indians, and then red for the Japanese. So we've got 6 is one headquarters order for them. 2 1s is nothing, and then they've got 6 actual company orders as well. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Reasonable spread for the start of the game. And then the Japanese, they have 1 6, so that's 1 headquarters. So that puts them up to 4. They started on 3. 1 on its own does nothing. So then they've got 6 7 orders for them. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 for the Japanese. Now we have to roll for initiative. The British and Indians, allies, let's just call them, are on 3. The Japanese are on 4, so the Japanese are getting 4 on their dice. The allies are getting 3 on their dice. So they've got 11, 14. The Japanese couldn't get any higher than that, so they've got 6. So, a bit of a tough one. The allies are going to take the initiative, I think. Currently there's no firing at the moment, so what the allies are wanting to do is bring on one of the sections over here, one of the platoons into the built-up area here, another platoon into the built-up area here, with the anti-tank rifles, so they're guarding that road, and then also the Indians want to bring in one of their platoons here as well. I'm going to disallow any firing at the moment because there's too much jungle in the way for everybody, but they will be firing soon. So what I'm going to have to do now is going to have to roll to see if these actually do deploy. This is what I want to do, so we'll see if the orders are wasted or not. On a 1 to a 3 they can, because this is really the Japanese that are rolling this roll. So 4 to 6 they fail, but a 1 to a 3 they pass. So let's have a look at the first one, the Indians. That's a 2, so they're on the table. The platoon down here, this is the important one actually. I want this one to be on because it's got the anti-tank rifle. Let's have a look. 6, no they don't. And then finally the last one, let's see what happens with them. A 5, no. So the British ones, so we basically wasted 2 orders and 2 platoons don't arrive on the table. So I'll just take those back off again and we'll go over to the Japanese turn. The first order the Japanese are given is to push this combat patrol further down the road so they can get deployed out closer towards the goal at the end of the road. However, the Indians are firing at it. They get a -2d6 because they're firing at a combat patrol. They haven't moved, it's not in cover, but it is automatically obscured and saves on a 3+ anyway. So let's just see how many hits they score on it. 4 or above, only 1 hit. So it's actually saving on a 3 or above, but if it fails, it doesn't hold shock and it's removed. So let's have a look. A 1, so it doesn't hold shock, so it's taken 1 shock, so it's off. So the Japanese plan there has been thwarted. Okay, in this Japanese turn, the rest of it, they've used the rest of their movements, their orders basically to do a lot of movements. So they've pushed forward this combat patrol instead to get that closer to the Indians there. They push forward these 2 sections, these 2 platoons. This one is going to fire with its attached medium machine gun. They've moved forward a combat patrol over there towards a built-up area, and they've shifted forward these 2 platoons as well. Now the Indians can't return fire because they already fired at that combat patrol. But the Japanese with their medium machine gun can fire. They get to re-roll up to 3 for every section because they've got their medium machine gun, but they're only firing with 4 dice because they've moved. So they can re-roll 3 and they are spotting because they are obscured behind those fences and the jungle. So let's have a look at what we're doing. They have spotted them and they've only hit 1, so they get those 3 re-rolls, 1 for each section. So that's another 2 hits. So that's 3 hits on the Indians. They are spotted. They are then taking, they're saving their morale on a 4 or above. So let's have a look. So that's 1 save, 2 fails, so they've got 2 shock. Right, turn 2. So let's have a look how many orders the Japanese get this time. A bit of a quiet turn. Oh, they've got 4 1s, so that means one of their companies is hesitant, so they can't actually advance. That's not good for them, is it? So let's have a look. They've got 5 orders, no HQ orders, so that's even worse for them. So let's put those there for a second. We'll find out which company it is. 1 to 3 is Company A, 4 to 6 Company B. It is Company B, so the ones on the right flank. They get themselves a hesitant marker, so I'll put that near their company commander who's here, so we know that they can't advance. And the Allies, let's see what they get, how many orders they have. We have, re-roll that one, 2 HQ orders, so that takes them up to 5, and then 2, 4, 6, 7 company orders. So quite a lot more than the Japanese at least. It's not always great when you're defending, but it's good, at least you can react to things. So let's have a look at their initiatives. The Japanese are on 4, +4. The Allies are on +5 now. So that's 8, 9 against 4, 8. So the Allies win again. So again, they're going to take the initiative to see if they can get the jump on the Japanese, especially with that hesitant company as well. Okay, so first of all, I've got a few orders. I've just put them down just so I remember what I'm going to do. But this is for the Allies' turn. The first one is the Indians are going to try to rally and then shoot at the Japanese here. I wanted them to land some artillery on them, but they're within the minimum safe distance of 8 inches, so they can't actually fire at them without these moving or withdrawing. But I'm going to hold them where they are for now, and we'll see how we get on. So they need a 4 or above to rally, They're only rallying one shock, potentially. Let's have a look. And one, no they don't. So they can either rally a shock, fire or move. They're currently hesitant, so they can only fire at close range unless they're reacting. So I'm going to actually withdraw them. No, I'm not. I'm going to rally off one shock on them. So that's their order done. That's all they're going to do. Then over here, I'm going to try to bring out another infantry platoon here. One thing I forgot to mention is that the British, not the Indians, the British can actually be dug in when they arrive on the table, simply because they had more chance to actually prepare defences. The Indians had fallen back at this point, so they were still coming back to unprepared defences. The British soldiers can be dug in, so I'm going to try to bring one platoon out here, another platoon out here, and then a third platoon into built-up area there. So hopefully to cover those 3 spots as the Japanese are coming in. So we'll try with this one first of all. 1, 2, or 3, they do it. 6, no they don't, so we've lost that order. The next one over here, a 2, they do deploy. Now they're the ones with the anti-tank gun. Sorry, with the anti-tank rifle. So they're deploying onto that combat patrol. I'll remove it in a second. Just going to get them on here so we can do the action. Then they are going to fire at those Japanese ahead of them. Just checking that they're in range. 14 inches. They're just in range. So they've moved. So that's 4. The Japanese are in the open, so I don't need a spotting dice. 4 dice because they've moved, so that's minus 2d6. So let's have a look. 4s and above, that's only 1 hit. So let's see what that does to the Japanese. They're saving on a 4 or above. A 2, they haven't saved, so they have taken 1 shock, but they can return fire. So the Japanese are firing back, and what they're going to fire back with is their 5 dice, minus 1 because of the shock. However, they're firing into trenches, so that's a minus another 2. And it doesn't count because they're firing into buildings. So it's 3 dice. They get to re-roll 3. They're also trying to spot as well. So let's have a look. 5, they have spotted them, but they missed all their hits. So they're re-rolling those hits. And all of those are misses as well. 1, 2 and a 3. So no effect on the British at all. And then our final British order is to try to bring out the other company over there. So 1, 2 or 3 they don't. No, 1 to 3 they do. So yes, they have another company brought in over there who will then fire at that combat patrol in front of them. I'll just get those set up now. And we have our other British unit that's just come in there, dug in, firing at that combat patrol. 4, 5 or 6. Let's have a look. That's 2 hits landed on it. They moved, so minus 2. And the combat patrol saves on a 3 or above. Let's have a look. 3 and a 4, so no effect. Alright, so I remembered what the Japanese are supposed to be doing, i.e. getting these tanks off the edge of the table. So they brought on the platoon of Techies 97 type tanks. They've got on, I moved them, they only moved 6 inches, so they've only managed to get slightly far forward of their starting position. They can't see anything to fire. I'm going to say those Indians are too obscured, and everything else, the jungle and things, are obscuring the rest of the infantry at this point. However, I've also deployed a Japanese platoon here onto this combat patrol, and they are going to fire at the Indians. I'll put an order down for the Indians because they're going to try to return fire. These guys over here are also going to fire at the Indians as well, and again the Indians will return fire at whichever one fires at them first. I've got another platoon over here of Japanese. They've moved forward into the jungles, and they're trying to flank this position here in the plantation. They will be firing at them. They will be returning fire as well. So that's why I put down the British and Indian orders straight away. So we'll work our way through. These are not moving, so they're just going to fire everything they've got. So if 6d6, they get re-rolls because they've got that attached MMG, and they are spotting. So let's see if they've spotted. Yes, they have spotted them. They've hit 1, 2, 3, 4 hits, and they get up to 3 re-rolls because of that MMG, so they're re-rolling 2. So both of those are misses. The Indians are saving on a 4 or above because they've been spotted, and they've saved all of them. So no effects on them whatsoever. Now the Indians are going to return fire at those Japanese. They're firing back with 5d6 because they have shock, they haven't moved. So they're firing back 5d6, but they need to spot as well. So see if they spot. They don't spot, but they land 2 hits on those Japanese section. And what happens to the Japanese section? They're saving on a 4, 5 or a 6. They've saved 1 and 1 shock, so that takes them up to 2 shocks, so they're now hesitant. So that means they can't move forward till they drop that shock. Then we've got our other Japanese section over here. They have moved, and they're, because they deployed, so they're rolling 4d6, and they are also spotting as well. So let's have a look. So they have spotted the Indians, and they've hit with 3 hits. They don't get any re-rolls. The Indians are saving on a 4 or above because of that spotting. So they've saved 2 of them, but taken 1 shock, so that's put them back up to 2, and they are also hesitant now. Then we've got over here, same again, these Japanese moved, but they're also firing into trenches, so they get another 2 off their dice, and they've got a spot as well, so we're looking for spotting. Spotting hasn't hit, and no hits have landed either, 2 1s. So the British return fire, they haven't moved, the Japanese are in the jungle, so they need to spot them as well. So let's have a look. 5, they have spotted them, but they've only hit with 2 hits. So let's see what that does. Japanese saving on a 4 or above. 2 fails, so that's another hesitant platoon there for the Japanese. So that's the end of turn 2. I've cleared up. They're no longer hesitant. Company B over here. The Japanese tanks have arrived to try to push forward. We've also got a bit of a push here in the centre, which is kind of like the bottleneck of the table anyway. The Indians are holding up pretty well, to be honest, and also we've got a couple of dug-in British units on the flanks of those Japanese attacks as well. So let's move on to turn 3 and see what happens with that one. Also, the Allies are now no longer under that interdiction dice, so they can just deploy at will. So the Japanese, anyway, they got 6, so that is 1 HQ point, and oh look, they've got another hesitant unit. Let's work that out in a second. First of all, so they got 5 company orders. So I'll just get those out so we know how many we got. 1, 2, 3, 4. There they are, there's 5. There's 6 there, but there's 5 with their HQ. So let's see which company it is. 1 to 3, Company A. 4 to 6, Company B. Company B again. Not entirely sure what's happening with them. There's obviously some communication breakdown somewhere. So that means they can't get forward. The tanks are attached to Company A, just in case you were wondering. So they can continue to move this turn. But let's have a look, see what the British or the Allies get. So they get another 2 HQ orders. They can only hold 6. They've currently got 5, so that takes them up to 6. So that just becomes a company order as well. 2 1s does nothing, and then they've got 2, 4, 5, but then they've got that extra company order, so they end up with 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There they are. And then we do our initiative roll. The Japanese have got a +5. The Allies have got a +6. So let's see what we get. So the Japanese there with 4 +5 is a 9. The Allies with a 5 with a +6 is 11. So again, the Allies are going to take that initiative because it's stalling this Japanese attack, and that's exactly what they want to do. Okay, so the British have just laid out the orders again, just so because they're not really moving, they're just firing. So basically, I've got the battalion mortars to open up on this Japanese section here, because they're the only ones I can fire at. Everybody else is within 8 inches of the potential target, so they can't actually fire at them. So we'll do that first. Then I'll work my way through all the firing with the rest of the units. And basically we've got the Indians here are going to be firing at this section, this platoon, this platoon's firing at this platoon is also firing at this platoon, we're trying to destroy them. And then this platoon will fire at the platoon that's been hit by the mortars as well. So first of all, we're starting with that mortar fire. We roll 2d6, there's no pluses or anything. This has cost us 2 orders, so that's a 9, so that is zeroed in. It's not a critical hit or anything, but we hit on 5d6 on that platoon, or we roll 5d6 to see if we hit on that platoon. There's no spotting dice here. Let's just have a look. 4s and above are hits, so that's only one hit. So the Japanese are saving on a 4 or above. A 1, no, they failed it, so that has suppressed them. So any more hits on that section, on that platoon, stop calling them sections, any more hits on that platoon will result in KIA hits. So then what I'm going to do is go straight onto the British platoon over there, and they are going to fire at those Japanese. They haven't moved. The Japanese are in cover, but they're not in buildings or anything, so it's just a normal 6d6 roll with a spotting dice. Let's have a look. 6, they've spotted them, and they've hit 3 times. Japanese are saving on a 4 or above. As I say, any extra hits here go onto the KIA roll, so let's have a look. So that's 1 extra hit, 2 have been saved. Because it's 1 extra hit on the KIA, we roll a 5 or a 6, and that's taken off 1 section. Let's have a look. 5, so that's the first section has been lost. It's a Japanese one. Okay, moving through. I'm going to start with the unit at the back here, firing at those Japanese. They're in the open because there's nothing in between, so there's no spotting dice, and they're not in the jungles. So let's have a look. 4, 5, 6 are hits, so that's 2 hits. The rest are misses. They're already on 2 shock, so let's see what happens. They're saving on a 4 or above. 4 and a 6 is a save, so they're okay. They could return fire at them, or they could wait and see if they can survive fire. I'll tell you what, I'm going to return fire straight away, because the amount of fire that's going to be coming into this platoon, they are probably going to want to return fire pretty quick. So they haven't moved, so they've got 6 dice. They are firing at trenches, they've also got shock, and they're firing into buildings as well, so they are concealed. So it's a spotting dice and only 3 dice. Let's have a look. So they have spotted them, and then they're hitting on 2 4s of hits. The British are saving on a 4 or above because they were spotted. So 4 and a 6, that's 2 saves. So that's done. It's the Japanese firing. Now we've got the Indians over here. They've got shock, but they are also trying to spot the Japanese through that little patch of jungle as well. They're not in the open. So let's have a look. So we're looking at a spotting dice of 0. That hasn't spotted, but they've landed 4 hits. The Japanese are now saving on a 3 or above. They've saved all of them, 3, 4, 5. So that's all them saved. And then we have this unit here. These have popped up, so they've moved, so they're -2 off their firing dice. So let's have a look at what they do. They're in the open. The Japanese are in the open as well, so they're hitting on a 4, 5 or a 6. 2 hits. The Japanese are saving on a 4, 5 or a 6. 2 saves, 4 and a 5. So as much lead as they put into there, it was incredibly ineffectual. Well done. Right, the Japanese have got quite a few orders they've given out. First of all, they moved their forward observation officer from the plantation at the back as far forward as they could get, because I was going to fire artillery, but I realised I couldn't actually see anything from where he was. So he's moved forward to try to get a good line of sight on Gurun itself and drop down some artillery. This platoon has moved into the plantation to try to take on the Indians, probably do a close assault at some point. The tanks have rapid moved all the way down the road. They moved about 12 inches, I think, so not very rapid, but they are piling forward as quick as they can. This platoon is firing at the Indians. These will fire at the Indians as well, even though they've moved. And then finally, we're using up a headquarters command to try to rally this platoon over here. So I'm going to start with them. They're rolling 3d6 for the rally. Let's see what happens. They passed all 3, so they are no longer suppressed. So that's them done. Then we've got the platoon with the fire with the medium machine gun. Now this is firing 5d6 because it's holding shock. It needs to spot because it's firing at those Indians. The reason I'm firing the Indians is because they will be carrying a anti-tank rifle in their group, and I don't want it to attack these tanks as they pass by, because I'm trying to get those tanks as quickly off that table as possible. So they're firing. They get to re-roll up to 3. So let's see. Have they spotted? They have spotted. They've hit 1, missed 4, so they can re-roll 3 of them. Let's see what happens with those. They've only scored one more hit, so that's 2 hits on the Indians. They're holding 2 shock already, so let's see what happens. 6 and a 4, no effect, it just does nothing to them. Our next Japanese are in the plantation. I'm going to allow them to fire because plantations are quite open, but they need a spotting dice. They moved, so it's 4 dice. So let's just see what happens with them. The Indians, before that happens, are going to use a headquarters token, headquarters order to fire back because they have no more company orders. So I'm going to fire a headquarters order to return fire at this section here. So they haven't moved, they're holding shock, so that's 1 dice off, and they need to spot. They haven't spotted, but they've hit 4 times. The Japanese there are on 2 shock and are defending, or their morale roll is a 3 or above, and they passed all of them, 4, 4, 4, 5. So we go back to the Japanese who are firing through the plantation. So we've got a spotting dice, and they haven't spotted, but they've landed 3 hits. Indians are saving on a 3 or above. They've failed 1, so that has suppressed them. And that's not good for the Indians. Okay, start of turn 4 now. We've already lost 1 Japanese section. This attack feels like it's bogging down slightly, with Company B not being able to do anything hardly. But let's see how we go. The tanks are making a move forward at least. But let's see if the Allies can hold them where they are. This time there are no hesitant companies, so that's good for the Japanese. They get one of their HQ orders back, which they spent last turn. Then they've got 1, 2, let's have a 4, 6, 7 company orders this time, so that's a lot better. That's going to probably help them. And then let's see what the Allies have. And they are on, oh, they have a hesitant company this time, so we'll sort that out in a second. But they have 1 HQ order. They dropped down to 5 because they used up 1, so they've gone back up to 6, and now they've got 5 company orders as well. So I'll just put those to one second aside. Let's see which company is hesitant. Company A is 1 to 3, 4 to 6, Company B. 4 to 6, that's Company B, so that's the Surreys. So that means they can't move forward, but they can fire, but they just can't move forward. I'll just check that fully in the rules, but that's pretty close to it anyway. So now we're trying for the initiative. The Allies are getting a +6, the Japanese +5. So guys, staying with those low rolls. The Japanese have got 5, +5 is 10. The Allies have got a 4, +6 is 10. Right, so in a draw, the player who had the initiative last turn wins it this turn, and that was the British. And they don't get a bonus order. One thing I've been forgetting to do is give that bonus order out to the players, whoever takes the initiative. I'm going to stop. I'm not going to do it for the rest of the game because so far it's no. I'll carry on doing it when I remember. But yeah, well, so the British take the initiative, but they do have that hesitant company which can only fire close range, which for rifles I think is 6 inches. So I don't think there's going to be much they can do anyway. Right, over on the Allied left flank, we've deployed 2 Indians. The first platoon is going to fire at the Foo as they arrive. So the Foo is in cover, so I'm going to need a spotting dice, and they moved, so we're rolling 4 dice. So let's have a look at what we get. They have spotted him, and they've landed 3 shots on them. Now they're saving on a 2 or above. They are either suppressed or okay, so they don't take shock. So let's just see what happens, but they're saving on a 2 or above. 2, 4 and a 6, so they've saved all of those shots. So I'm going to do the same again with the next platoon here, because I want to try to shut down those Japanese eyes as they're coming through that jungle. So same again. They haven't spotted them, but they have landed 4 shots. So that means well, they're automatically saving on a 2 or above. I didn't need to roll the spotting dice anyway. So 1s are failures. Let's have a look. Not a single one. So 2 4s, 5 and a 6. So nothing happens to that foo. Now, our first order over here is going to be to try to get these to rally. They're going to use 3d6. So let's have a look. We've passed 3 of them. So they're no longer affected. Then I'm going to use the commander order for the company commander, and he then is going to try to get them to fire at the Japanese section in front of them. Let's have a look. 3, actually no, they're going to fire at the tanks, but a 3 is 2 extra orders, so that's cost them another 2 orders, so that's used up all the allied orders for now. We still do have our command orders, our HQ orders, but for now all the company orders have been used up. Okay, so the Indians are going to use their integral anti-tank platoon weapon to their rifle to fire at the lead Tiki tank. It has an armour of 2. This has initially a firepower of 1, but they are in close range. They're less than 10 inches away, so they get a +1 on there to hit. So they need a 7 or above anyway to hit. But they are spotted because they're firing through that plantation. So let's just see what happens. So they haven't spotted them. They've rolled a 5 with a +1 is a 6, so that's a miss anyway. So they've spent 2 orders there to miss those tanks. Great going. Right, the British are going well. The Allies are the Allies are going to reveal their ambush now, because I want it to fire at those tanks because they're getting a little bit close. So because it's them that's revealing it rather than it being revealed, I'll just basically flip these cards until I find which one it is. So there's one in here, one in here, one in here, and then I'll put the gun on the table and then it'll fire. For this we're using a HQ token, a HQ order. So let's have a look. There we are. Found it straight away. So I'll place this on the table in its position. It's firing through those bushes, so it is obscured, but it is going to be able to fire at least at those tanks. So I'll just remove the rest of these. Okay, I'm going to allow them to fire through this patch of jungle, but they are going to be obscured simply because they would have their guns trained on the road anyway. So they're looking specifically through that point to see if they can see the tanks. So this is using up a HQ order. They need to hit on a 7 or above because they're not in close range, but they also need the spotting dice as well. So let's have a look at what happens. 5, they have spotted them. A 10 is a hit, which is also a critical hit as well, so that gives them a +1 to their gun firepower, which is already on a 4, I believe. No, it's a 2-pounder, it's already on a 5, so that goes up to 6 against the Tiki's armour of a 2. So this is a -4 on their defence dice, and they've been spotted. So let's have a look what happens. 4 -4 is knocked out, so that's the first Japanese tank taken out. Okay, I've done some Japanese moving. The first ones have moved a platoon over here, and then they are going to fire at the Indians here. I'll show you why in a second. They've moved and they're spotting. So let's have a look. So they've spotted them, but they've only landed 1 hit on them. They're defending on a 4 or above. A 4, so they've passed their morale test. Then we've got this platoon over here is now firing, and then they're going to close assault those Indians. So same again, let's have a look. We spotted them, and they've landed 2 hits. So the Indians have, they've passed both of those. Now the Indians are going to react fire by spending a HQ token. They're not moving, but they do need to spot. So let's see, they have spotted and they've landed 2 hits on those Japanese. So let's see what happens with them. They've passed both of those. So now the Japanese need to move into close assault. They need to be within an inch. They're actually 4 inches away, and they're moving at 2d6. So they need a 3 or above basically to hit those Indians. So let's have a look. A 6, that's definite. So I'm not going to move them for now. I'm just going to leave them where they are. But let's do the attack. So we have the Japanese They have 2d6 per section, so that's 6. There are no other additions apart from the Japanese aggression, which gives them that extra 1. And they need a 4 or above to hit. The defending Indians, they were hoping that they would have done a little bit more damage on them. They're not even shocked. So they are now, they're defending on a 6, on 6d6, but no other modifiers. So we need a 4 and above. All hits are shock automatically. So let's see what happens to the Indians. This is a Japanese roll. So they've landed, ooh, that's a lot of shock. That's 5 shock. So the first 3 is them suppressed. Let's just put a suppressed marker down on them straight away. And then the 2 over is 1 kill. So they're already 1 kill. And then the Indians defend back. They cause 3 hits. So that suppresses the Japanese. But the Japanese win. They inflict the most shocks, so they take and hold the position. They get to rally, and the Indians have to withdraw. But the Japanese are currently suppressed. So let's see if they rally. A 4, they have rallied, so they're on 2 shock rather than being suppressed. So I'll just get those moved. But the Japanese have actually pushed through out of the plantation through that Indian line. Our next Japanese order is they've pushed forward the tanks. They've managed to get 14 inches down that table, so they're bombing down now. But the British are using up another HQ order to react fire at the tanks as they come down and past them. So let's have a look, see if they hit them. They need a spotting dice because they're obscured through that jungle. So they haven't spotted them, but they have hit, and they are close range, so that gives them 10, 11 is a critical hit. So that's another +1 onto their firepower already, which is already a 4. Sorry, no, it's not. It's a 5, so that becomes a 6 again. 6 against the armour of the Teke is a 6 against 2, so the Japanese have a -2, but they're not spotted, so they're obscured. So the maximum they can get is 2 shock, actually. They can't take them out. So let's just see. -4, 10 -4 is 6. 6 is 1 shock on one of the tanks. And then we've got a bit more Japanese firing over here. We've got the MMG attached platoon firing into these trenches. They're only rolling 3 dice, but they do get the re-rolls. So they've not spotted, but they have missed 1, so they can re-roll that. So that misses again. So they've got 2 hits, but they're saving on a 3 or above. So 1 failure and 1 save. So that's 1 shot on those British in there, on those Surreys. And then we've got, over there we've got 4 for the sections firing, -2 for firing into the trenches, and they're spotting at them as well. So let's see, 2 dice, 1 hit, 1 miss, and not spotted. So there's no re-rolls, so a 3 or above, and the British have passed their morale. And then we're on to the regroup phase, and this is the first time I've used it. This British platoon here hasn't done anything this turn because they were hesitant, so that is regrouping with 3d6, or rallying should I say. They passed 2 of them, so they can get rid of that shock off them. So I'll just tidy up the table and we'll move on to turn 5. Okay, we're at a bit of a crucial juncture here because the Japanese tanks are literally 16 inches away from that table edge. So potentially 1 fast move and they could get off the table. If not, probably 2 turns, and I think they may be off. So the British and the Indians have got to stop them here. So let's have a look what they get. They've got another hesitant unit. We'll find out who that is in 1 second once I've worked out the rest. They don't get any HQ points, which is not good for them because they probably need them at this point, but they do get 6 orders. Let's count those out. There we go, 6 orders. And then the Japanese, they have 2 HQ orders. They're already on 5, so that takes them up to 6. So that's 1 extra order for the companies, but they then have 8 company orders. So that is probably exactly what they need. So 3, 4, 5, yeah, so there's 8. Put those down now near their HQ. And now we're rolling for the initiative. So we've got the Allies are a +4, the Japanese are a +6. The Allies really need to win this, otherwise they're going to have to do a lot of reacting. I don't think they're going to win this. So let's see, 4 and 4 is 8 against 6 and 6 is 12. So the Japanese are quite obviously going to take the initiative this turn. One thing to do, I just forgot, is to roll to see which British or which Allied unit is hesitant. So 1 to 3 it's the Surreys, 4 to 6 it's the Indians. 4 to 6 it's the Indians, which is kind of what they needed really, because they don't want that anti-tank gun to be hesitant. Okay, before the obvious thing of moving the tanks, I've got the Japanese infantry to do quite a few things. So these are firing at the Indians here, then these are going to close assault them. These ones over here are going to machine gun the Indians over here. So I'm going to start with these because these have moved. So they've moved. They don't need to spot because they're just firing over that brush there. So they do have to, they can re-roll up to 3 because they've got that attached MMG. So let's have a look. 2 hits, re-roll 2 of them. Plus 2 more hits. So that's 4 hits on these Indians here. Let's have a look what happens. They've passed 2, failed 2. And then over here we've got these guys have moved, but they're firing at close range. And they've also got shock as well, so that's minus 1 dice for moving because they move less than 4 inch, but minus 1 dice for the shock, but then plus 1 dice for short close range 6 inch. So let's have a look, see what happens. And they've hit with 2. They didn't need a spotting dice, they don't get any re-rolls. So let's see what happens with that. Indians have saved 1, passed 1. So then the next attack is from the Japanese over there. They're moving, so they're rolling 4d6, plus they're trying to spot as well. So let's see, so they have spotted, and they've landed 1 shot on those Indians. Let's see what happens to them. A 6, they've passed it, so that's alright for them. Now they have to now try to move into close combat. They only need to be within 1 inch, and they are 4 inches away, same again as before, so they need a 3 or above basically. 10, so they're in. I'm going to pull them in this time so it looks nice for the viewer. So here we are, so we another attack through the plantation. So the Japanese have 2d6 per section, that's 4, 5, 6 straight away. They get that +1 because they're aggressive, so that takes them up to 7. The Indians start with 6, however they have shock, so that takes 1 off, so they're down to 5. 4 or above are hits, remember, so we'll roll all these together and pull out everything. So 4 or above are hits, so I'm going to take out all the hits, 1, 2, 3. The Japanese have caused 3 hits there. The Indians have caused 5 hits. Ooh, that's a lot of difference, isn't it? So let's see, let's do the Indians. So they've taken 2 shock, so that suppressed them, and then 1 KIA roll, 5 or 6, and they've got a KIA. 6, they've lost a section, so that's 1. So the Japanese have taken 3 shocks, so that suppressed them, and then they've automatically. So the Japanese immediately retreat because they lost 3d6 inches back, so that's 6 inches back, so that's pretty much almost where they started, to be honest. So back here, away from the Indians. The next Japanese order is for this platoon to fire at the British Surreys here. They're firing into trenches, so -2. They're also shocked, so -1. So 3 dice. They can re-roll. They have spotted. They've missed with 2, so they're going to re-roll 2. So they've hits with 1 of those. So 2 hits on the British. They're saving on a 4 or above. 1 save, 1 shock. Okay, so we're on to the important bit here. The Japanese tanks are going to move, and they're going to pile forward as 1. Before they do that, the British are going to try to react to them with the firing. So we've got these 2 platoons are going to fire with their anti-tank integral anti-tank rifle, and the anti-tank gun is obviously going to fire as well. So I've given out their orders, but I've got to see if they can actually fire or not. The anti-tank gun can fire on a 3 or above, so let's roll, see. Yes, it can. So that does get a shot off. Let's see if this platoon over here does. They will do on a 4 or above. No, they can't. So that order is lost. And then the other one, 4 or above. No, they can't either. So the Japanese tanks are taken completely by surprise. That is really not what they wanted right now. But we'll fire first of all with our anti-tank gun. So it needs a 7 or above to hit. It has no shock. It hasn't moved. It does need to spot though. So let's see if we can spot it or not. Spot the tanks, and that's really all there is. Oh, it's close range, so +1 as well actually. So it has spotted it. It's got a 5 with a +1 is a 6. So that's still a miss anyway. So that's unfortunate for the British. So we'll go straight onto the Japanese move. They've used up most of their orders at that point. So let's see if the Japanese tanks actually move or not. So as I said, we need a 16-inch or more. They've actually got 4, 9. They get an extra 2 because they're on the road. So that's 11 inches. So they're not off the table yet, but they're not far from it. Alright, so it's the British turn. So they've manhandled this gun. The way you do that is you roll 2d6 and you take the lowest score, and I rolled a double 3, so they basically moved 3 inches. So I've allowed them to get as far here and they can fire down this alleyway at this tank at the back here. This is probably going to be the last shot that they'll get against them, because I'm assuming they're going to be off the table on the next Japanese turn. You never know, they might get the initiative next turn, but we're firing anyway. So they've moved, so it's a -1 to hit. And that's really it. I think on their close range, so it's +1, so it's 7 or more to hit, but they're going to need a spotting dice. So let's have a look. So they haven't spotted them. They've got a 5. Let's say the +1 and -1 cancelled out to the close range. 5 is less than the 7, so they've actually missed. Okay, so that's great. And then the British company over here is also going to fire its anti-tank rifle at this leading tank here. Because they're facing the opposite way, I'm going to give them the penalty of having moved as well, but they also get that +1 because they are within close range. So these are not obscured because they can see from that building where it is, but this is only firing with a power of 1. Let's have a look. So we've got a 10, so that is a critical hit, so that's a +1 to the firepower. So that gives them a 2 against the armour of the tank being a 2. So it's a straight roll, straight defence roll for the Japanese tank. So let's have a look. They are spotted. 4 or less will knock it out. Double 1, that's another tank knocked out. So now the Japanese are currently on. They've just got their first foobar because they've lost 2 tanks. They've lost 2 sections. So they now have a foobar. So the Japanese have got that foobar, so I'm going to have to do the command crisis roll. So we roll 1 dice first of all. This is a Japanese dice, a 2. And then we roll the British guess, a 4 and a 5. Now, if they would, either of these are matched up with the Japanese roll, they would have lost points from their HQ orders. But they didn't, so they just carry on as normal, but they do have that foobar. And the final British order for this turn is for this platoon to fire at the Japanese here, rolling 5d6, so we've hit on 3 of them, 2 have missed. So let's see what that does. The Japanese are already on 2 shock, so they are spotted, so they're failing on a 4 or above, passing on a 4 or above. They've failed on 1-3, so that's taken them down to suppressed. I was going to fire back with them, but they can't fire back now because they're not in short range. No, they can react to fire when they're suppressed. No, they can't. So they can't. So that's their turn over. Just before we go into what might be the game's final turn, I'm going to use a company commander order to try to get the gun to fire again. So let's see what happens. We roll the d6. This is how many orders it costs us. 5 for a second rate battalion is 1 extra order, so we're going to have to take that from our HQ, so that drops them down to 3, but could have been worse. And then they are going to fire again. That's gun, Again, it's obscured, so I'm going to have to roll the spotting dice, and we need a 7 or above, +1 because he hasn't moved this time, and it's also, it is close range. So we've got 6, a 7, so that's a hit, but it hasn't spotted it. It's striking with a 6 power, no, 5 power, sorry, not 6. 5 against the 2 of the tank, the armour, so that's a -3 on that save. So let's have a look. 3 becomes a 2, that's another taken out. They are mounting them up right now. Right, well, the Japanese are 3 tanks down. They've just got to get that last one off the table, and it's game over. And they're about 4 inches away from the table edge. Let's just see what happens. Orders phase. So for the Allies, they've got a HQ order. Only 1 this time, so no hesitant units. 3, 6, 7 company orders, so that's pretty good for them. Because they'll be wanting to react to any Japanese thing that moves, i.e. that tank. So that takes their HQ orders up to 4. The Japanese are down 1 dice now because of that foobar. Let's see what they got. They've got double 6. So they've already got 6 on their HQ dice, so that converts into company dice. They've only got 2 1s, so they are ignored anyway. 2, 4, 6 orders for the Japanese. So let's check our initiatives. So the Japanese have got +2, +6, sorry, and the Allies have got a +4. So the Japanese 6, 7, 8, 14. The Allies is 6 + 4 is 12. So obviously the Japanese are going to take the initiative this turn, and they will do. Right, so over here, the Japanese are going to move this tank. This is the order they're giving out. The British Surreys are going to order their anti-tank section to fire at the tank before it moves. If they can't, then it will move and then they will fire. They need a 4, 5 or a 6 to be able to do this. 6 they can, so they can actually target it. It is obscured because it's behind some burning hulks. So I've got to roll the spotting dice. They need a 7 or above to hit. They're close range. They haven't moved because they'd moved to the position that they're in now last turn. So +1 on the hit. 4 becomes a 5. They haven't spotted it. They can't see it. They've pranged off the 6 pound, 2 pounder can't actually see it anyway because it's out of line of sight down that alleyway, so I'm not allowing that a shot. The Japanese are then going to move their tank, and they are moving it, and it's the last tank. 3d6 inches, that's 7 inches. That's far more than enough they need to get this off the table and to split the battalions and win the Battle of Gurun. So there we have it. The Battle of Gurun is won by the Japanese yet again. In the original battle, it took them 2 days to actually get through the Allied defences, but they certainly did. And as I said at the start, if any Japanese tank got off this road at the bottom, it would then split the battalions, the Indians, the Punjabis and the Surreys, and make their position untenable. And that is what the Japanese were trying to do, and that's what they did. They managed to get through the plantations here, attack the Indians and throw them back as well, and cause quite a bit of damage on them. They took quite a lot of casualties themselves, as you would expect from any attacking unit. They lost, I think it was, well, 2 infantry sections and 3 tanks. They were the light tanks, but the Allies on the other hand only lost 2 infantry sections. So that was actually quite a short game of O Group. This could have gone quite a lot longer because the Japanese had only just suffered their first foobar. You can see it over here. So had that last tank been destroyed, this would have then had to turn into a bit more of a pitch battle with the Japanese trying to force through with their infantry. Well, that was really interesting actually. I really enjoyed that. Very true to life, and a pretty stoic defence on the part of the Allies at least, including the Indians, the Punjabis over here, who actually stood their ground against the Japanese bayonet attack, which was pretty good. because I didn't expect that to win. Interestingly, no artillery was used whatsoever, and that's partly, I think, largely because of the closeness of the jungle. Once the Japanese had deployed, they got in very close, so it was impossible to actually fire any artillery at them, and also the flatness of the board as well, on this side at least, didn't really lend itself to artillery spotters. They needed to be a little bit more in the open, and I was trying to do that with the Japanese ones coming through the plantations here. The British one was over here, but he wouldn't have been able to target this unit because they were too close to both the Indians and to the British as well over here, and he just couldn't get a bead on the ones over here. That was the next best target, but even then couldn't actually see them. Well, that was interesting, and interesting to do a different theatre as well. Malaya is one of my favourite theatres to wargame. It's you very rarely see it on the board. It's usually the islands when people are doing the Pacific and the Eastern War. But Malaya is an incredibly interesting campaign, just to see how long the Allies can hold on for. This has actually got me thinking to go back and to actually repeat all the old rapid fire campaign scenarios for the Malaya campaign that we first played 7 years ago. So I might actually do that and put together a large O group campaign for Malaya and fight through each of the different actions and just see how that goes. Something to think about. Really loving O group, really into it now. I really like the game. It's nice and simple. Most of it you can hold in your head as you play. I'm still making mistakes, obviously. I'm going to make mistakes in any game I play, but I'm still enjoying the game, and it still feels like you're having to make decisions on the hoof as situations arise, rather than just being able to do everything that you would want to be able to do. Great game. Keep watching. You'll see more of these O group games come along, and as I say, there may be some more coming out from Malaya. It's certainly given me another thing to look at for O group for sure, but that is for the future. As I say, for now, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Hit that like button, drop me a comment, and I'll see you in the next video.